An ordinary woman trapped between bills and silence crosses paths with a stranger on a rainy night. What he said inside that car changed everything, and no one was prepared for what came next. Rain fell in soft sheets over Chicago, turning the sidewalks into dark mirrors and the car headlights into liquid trails that streamed down the streets. Emma Carter gripped the steering wheel of the rented sedan she used to supplement her income as a rideshare driver. It was almost midnight when she accepted one more ride, even though her body was begging for rest. The destination was a luxury hotel in the Gold Coast neighborhood, where she never felt quite comfortable, but where rides usually resulted in good tips. Working double shifts had become routine. During the day, she served coffee and breakfast sandwiches at a simple diner in Pilsen. At night, she drove for hours, moving through neighborhoods that seemed like entirely different worlds from her own. All of it was for Liam, her 5-year-old son, who believed his mother was some kind of silent hero who made everything work out, even when nothing seemed to cooperate. When she pulled up in front of the majestic Chicago hotel, Emma watched a man in a dark suit emerge from the revolving door. His hair was disheveled from the humidity, his tie loosened, and there was a weariness in his eyes that she recognized well, though probably for different reasons. He got into the car without saying much. The app had already entered the destination, a gated community in Lincoln Park. During the drive, he remained silent until, with a voice thick with emotion and without looking at her, he said something that would echo in Emma's mind long after that night. It was a simple phrase, but loaded with emotional weight that seemed to open a crack in her own armor. There was no more conversation after that. When they arrived, he had fallen asleep in the back seat, and Emma, hesitating, covered him with the old denim jacket she always kept in the car before asking for help at the security gate. She did not know his name nor the extent of who he was. For her, in that moment, he was just someone who needed a bit of humanity. In the following days, Emma continued her routine with the same focus as always, taking Liam to school, working at the diner, driving at night. But there was something different, a subtle restlessness, as if something had shifted inside her. Then, on a Wednesday morning, as she balanced a tray with coffees and breakfast plates, she looked toward the diner door and recognized the man from that ride. He looked different, more sober, more attentive, and he watched her as if he were searching for something more than just coffee. They exchanged no words beyond what was necessary, but he returned the following days. And on the following nights, ride notifications began appearing with the same pickup point, almost always in locations where he, Michael Harrison, should already have his own driver. Gradually, Emma began to realize that he did not just want transportation. He wanted to be there in that back seat, surrounded by silence and the absence of any hidden interest. Emma was not the type to be easily charmed. After being abandoned while still pregnant, she had learned to live with little and expect even less. But there was something about Michael that disarmed her, not because of his appearance or status, but because of the cracks he did not hide as well as he thought. One day, while cleaning the back seat, she found an expensive handkerchief with his initials embroidered on it. She kept the item, not quite sure why. On another night, when she arrived home, she found one of Liam's drawings on the table. In it, 3 figures holding hands, a boy, a woman with her hair pulled back, and a man in a suit. At the top of the page, in crooked letters, the name Michael next to the word mommy. The bond between them grew slowly, without promises, without intrusions. Michael began showing up at the diner, ordered the daily special, brought juice for Liam, helped Emma cover the boy with a sweater on a cold, late afternoon at the park. And even so, there was never room for illusions. Emma knew where she stood. She knew the weight that people like her carried when they crossed paths with men like him. But she also knew that somehow Michael seemed to find himself in the small things, as if the simple routines of her life offered him a different way to breathe than the one that surrounded him in his glass and concrete towers. The calm, however, did not last long. On a grey morning, Liam woke up with a high fever. Emma had to cancel her rides and rush to the hospital. When he found out, Michael insisted on accompanying her. At the emergency room entrance, he picked up Liam with a care that surprised even Emma herself. For hours, Michael sat beside her in the waiting room, holding the old jacket that had once been a blanket for him. A random photographer captured the scene. The next day, the image was on gossip websites with sensational headlines. Mysterious CEO appears with woman and child at public Chicago hospital. The internet relentless reacted. Comments called her a gold digger, accused Michael of hiding a family, suggested scandals. Emma, until then accustomed to anonymity, felt the weight of gratuitous judgment. At the diner, whispers began. During one ride, she heard passengers commenting that women like that always find a way to climb up in life. When Michael sought her out to offer steady work as a personal driver, with high pay and flexibility to care for Liam, she hesitated. Not out of pride, but out of fear of losing the little control she still had over her own narrative. During a meeting with investors, which Emma waited outside, she overheard muffled laughter and malicious jokes about the waitress who became a luxury chauffeur. The wound opened by social media now bled in quieter spaces. Without warning, she stopped showing up. Michael tried to contact her for days. He sent messages, called, went to the diner and learned she had quit, not knowing exactly what had driven her away, but sensing it was not just the exposure or the scandal. He understood he had failed. Not through omission, but by not realizing soon enough how exposed she was, and how much he should have protected her, not as an influential man, but as someone who truly cared. There were days of silence until he decided to go to the neighborhood where she lived. A place he had only known from afar, between dark windows and charity events. He found the building, climbed the stairs, knocked on the door. She answered but did not invite him in. She was firm, contained. His words came loaded with regret but also with recognition. She did not need a savior. She needed to be seen, to be respected, to be remembered for who she was, not for where she served coffee or who she drove in her car. The conversation was short, and the door closed with the same firmness with which it had been opened. 2 days later, Emma found a simple envelope under the door. Inside, a letter. Michael, without flourishes, spoke about how much that ride had changed him, about the weight of his own words, about what he had discovered in absences, about the kind of life he wanted to build, not with ostentation, but with truth. Liam, seeing the letter, asked if it was from someone Mommy liked. Then he added, if he made a mistake, he can try again, right? Like me when I drop things. That night, Emma stayed awake for a long time. There was no right answer. There was, however, the choice to allow something unlikely to blossom at the right time. And perhaps, just perhaps, that phrase spoken in the back seat of a car on an ordinary night was the starting point not for a fairy tale story, but for a life built with real steps as much as possible, one day at a time. The next morning arrived with unusual clarity, the kind of morning where the light seems sharper, where every sound feels more present. Emma woke before her alarm, her mind already running through the routines she had perfected over years of survival. Get Liam ready for school, pack his lunch with whatever was available in the refrigerator, make sure his homework was in his backpack, check that his coat was clean enough. These small rituals had become her anchor, the things that made sense when everything else felt chaotic. But today, there was something else occupying space in her thoughts, something that refused to be pushed aside no matter how hard she tried. The letter sat on her kitchen counter, exactly where she had left it the night before. She had not opened it again after reading it the first time, but she did not need to. The words were already carved into her memory. Michael's handwriting was surprisingly unpretentious, almost rushed, as if he had written it in one sitting without allowing himself to edit or reconsider. That rawness made it harder to dismiss. In the letter, he had not tried to justify or explain away what had happened. He had not promised to fix everything or make the gossip disappear. Instead, he had written about the moment when he first got into her car that rainy night, about how he had been returning from a dinner where millions of dollars had been discussed with the same casualness that most people talked about grocery shopping. He wrote about feeling hollow, about going through the motions of a life that looked impressive from the outside, but felt increasingly empty. And then he wrote about what he had said to her that night, the thing that had opened a crack in both of them. Emma remembered it clearly. They had been stopped at a red light on Michigan Avenue, the rain creating a curtain of sound around them. Michael had spoken quietly, almost as if he were talking to himself. I don't know if I'm living or just existing anymore. 5 simple words that carried the weight of an entire life. Emma had not responded, had not known what to say to this stranger who was suddenly so vulnerable in her back seat. But something about those words had resonated with her own exhaustion. her own questions about whether the endless grind of her days added up to anything beyond mere survival. Now, standing in her small kitchen with morning light filtering through cheap curtains, Emma wondered if maybe that moment had been significant for both of them. Maybe it was not about him being a wealthy CEO or her being a struggling single mother. Maybe it was just about two people who had accidentally shown each other a glimpse of truth in a world that seemed to reward pretense above all else. Liam shuffled into the kitchen, still in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Mommy, is it a school day?" His voice was soft, still caught between sleep and waking. Emma smiled and moved to make him breakfast, grateful for the interruption to her spiraling thoughts. "Yes, baby, but we have a little time. What do you want for breakfast?" As she poured cereal into a bowl and added milk, she watched Liam climb onto his chair, his small legs swinging beneath him. He looked at the letter on the counter with curious eyes. "Is that from Michael?" Emma paused, surprised. How did he remember the name? They had only met a handful of times, brief encounters when Michael had shown up at the park or stopped by the diner. Liam had a way of paying attention to things Emma thought he was too young to notice. "Yes, it is," she said carefully. "He wanted to say he was sorry." Liam considered this, his spoon halfway to his mouth. "Mom, why did he need to say sorry? Did he break something?" The innocence of the question made Emma's chest tighten. How could she explain to a 5-year-old the complicated mess of social media judgment, class differences, and her own fear of being seen as someone who used others for personal gain? How could she tell him that sometimes adults hurt each other, not through clear actions, but through the weight of 1,000 small assumptions and systemic inequalities? She settled for a simpler truth. Sometimes people make mistakes, even when they're trying to do the right thing. Michael wants another chance to be a better friend. Liam nodded, satisfied with this explanation, and returned to his cereal. "You should give him another chance, Mommy. Everyone deserves another chance." The wisdom from such a small person struck Emma deeply. Children had a way of cutting through complexity to reach essential truths. Everyone deserves another chance. But did they? Did Michael deserve another chance when his mere presence in her life had exposed her to ridicule and judgment? Did she deserve another chance when she had vanished without explanation, without giving him an opportunity to understand what had hurt her? The questions circled in her mind as she got Liam ready for school, as she drove him through the familiar streets, as she watched him run into the building with his backpack bouncing against his small shoulders. After dropping him off, Emma did not head to her next obligation. Instead, she drove aimlessly through the city, something she rarely allowed herself to do. Gas was expensive, time was precious, and there was always something that needed to be done. But today she needed space to think. She found herself driving past the diner in Pilsen, where she had worked for 3 years. Through the window she could see Rosa, the older woman who ran the place, moving between tables with practiced efficiency. Emma had quit without much explanation, had simply called and said she could not work there anymore. Rosa had not pushed, had simply accepted the resignation with understanding in her voice, as if she knew there were some stories that people needed to keep to themselves. Emma kept driving, moving through neighborhoods that marked the economic geography of Chicago as clearly as any map. From the working-class streets of Pilsen, with their colorful murals and small shops, through the gradually gentrifying areas where old buildings stood next to new developments, and into the gleaming towers of downtown, where Michael's world existed. She had spent so much time moving between these worlds as a driver, transporting people from one reality to another, but always remaining separate, always just the person behind the wheel. That separation had felt safe. It had felt manageable. But somewhere along the way the boundaries had blurred, and she was not sure how to navigate that change. Her phone buzzed with ride requests that she ignored. She thought about the practical implications of Michael's offer. A steady salary as a personal driver would mean financial stability she had never experienced. It would mean not having to work double shifts, not having to choose between paying rent and buying Liam new shoes. It would mean flexibility to be present for school events, to not always be exhausted, to maybe have a moment to breathe. But it also meant being visibly connected to Michael, being subject to more scrutiny, more assumptions, more judgments about her character and motives. The gossip sites had been brutal. Emma had made the mistake of reading the comments, of seeing herself reduced to stereotypes and assumptions, Gold digger, opportunist, social climber. The words had stung not just because they were cruel, but because they denied her any complexity, any humanity. In those comments, she was not a person who worked 2 jobs to support her child, who had survived abandonment and rebuilt a life from nothing, who had her own dreams and fears and moments of weakness. She was just a type, a familiar narrative that people felt comfortable condemning. And Michael had not escaped judgment either. The comments about him ranged from accusations of hypocrisy, pretending to be a family man while running a corporation, to suggestions that he was slumming, seeking some kind of authenticity tourism by spending time with regular people. Emma had not expected to feel protective of him, but reading those comments she had, because she knew that the person who had fallen asleep in her back seat, vulnerable and exhausted, was more real than any public persona. She knew that the man who had sat in a hospital waiting room for hours, holding her old jacket like a lifeline, was not performing or slumming. He was just being human in the only way he knew how at that moment. By early afternoon, Emma found herself parked near Grant Park, watching people move through their lives. Joggers passed by, business people hurried with coffee cups, tourists took photos of the skyline, everyone moving through their own reality, mostly unaware of each other's internal worlds. She thought about what Michael had written in his letter, about wanting to build a life with truth instead of ostentation. It was a nice sentiment, but what did it mean in practice? Could someone like Michael actually step away from the world that had shaped him? Could she trust that his interest in her life was genuine and not just a temporary escape from his own dissatisfaction? The questions had no easy answers, but Emma realized she was tired of making decisions based on fear. Fear had kept her safe, had helped her survive, but it had also kept her small, kept her from imagining possibilities beyond the narrow path she had carved for herself. Maybe Liam was right. Maybe everyone deserved another chance, including her. Not a chance to be rescued or saved, but a chance to be seen fully and choose connection despite the risks. Her phone buzzed again, but this time it was not a ride request. It was a text from Rosa at the diner. "Mija, I don't know what happened, but your job is here if you want it. No questions asked. We miss you." The simple kindness of the message brought unexpected tears to Emma's eyes. She had been so focused on the judgment, on the cruel comments and whispered gossip, that she had almost forgotten about the people who knew her, who valued her for who she actually was. Rosa, who had given her a job when she was pregnant and desperate. Marcus, the regular customer, who always left a generous tip and asked about Liam's latest drawings. The other drivers she had connected with during long nights, sharing coffee and stories at 24-hour diners. These people had seen her struggle and had not judged her for it. They had not reduced her to a stereotype. Maybe that was what mattered most, holding on to the people who saw your humanity even when the world tried to deny it. Emma started her car and began driving with a destination in mind for the first time that day. She did not head back to her apartment or toward the diner. Instead, she drove to Lincoln Park, to the neighborhood where Michael lived. She had only been there once, that first night when she had covered him with her jacket and asked the security guard for help. Now in daylight, the area looked different. The buildings were pristine, the streets carefully maintained, the cars parked along the curbs, all expensive models. It was a world designed to exclude, to make clear who belonged and who did not. Emma found the address from that night and parked across the street. She sat in her car, working up the courage to approach. What would she even say? What did she want from this conversation? She was not sure, but she knew she needed to have it. She needed to look Michael in the eye and tell him how his world had crashed into hers, how the exposure had hurt, but also how his words that rainy night had stayed with her, how the simple act of him showing up had meant something, even if it had also complicated everything. Before she could overthink it further, Emma got out of the car and walked to the building entrance. The doorman, impeccably dressed in a uniform that probably cost more than her monthly rent, looked at her with polite assessment. "Can I help you?" His tone was professional, but carried an undertone of skepticism, a subtle question about whether she belonged there. Emma straightened her shoulders, refusing to be intimidated. "I'm here to see Michael Harrison." The doorman's expression shifted slightly, recognition flickering across his features. He had probably seen the photos, had probably formed his own opinions. "Is he expecting you?" "No," Emma admitted, "but I think he'll want to see me." Tell him Emma Carter is here. The doorman hesitated, then picked up a phone and spoke quietly into it. After a moment, he hung up and gestured toward the elevator. 32nd floor. His surprise was evident, as if he had expected to be told to send her away. Emma stepped into the elevator, her heart pounding as the numbers climbed. She had never been good at grand gestures, had never been the type to show up unannounced and declare her feelings. But maybe that was exactly what this moment required. Not a calculated decision, but a leap of faith. The elevator doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment, the kind of space that existed in a completely different reality from her cramped two-bedroom, in a building where the heat worked sporadically. Michael was standing by the window, looking out at the city stretched below. He turned when he heard the elevator, and the expression on his face was a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Emma," he said, his voice careful, "you came." She stepped into the space, feeling acutely aware of the contrast between his world and hers. The apartment was beautiful in an understated way, all clean lines and expensive simplicity. Art on the walls that was probably worth more than she would earn in a decade. A view that made the city look like something manageable, something that could be understood and controlled from sufficient height. "I got your letter," Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt. Michael nodded, waiting, not trying to fill the silence with easy words. She appreciated that he was giving her space to find what she needed to say. "You wrote about that night, about what you said in my car. Do you remember what I was thinking when you said that?" Michael shook his head slowly. "I was thinking that I recognized that feeling. I was thinking that I had spent so long just surviving that I wasn't sure I knew how to actually live anymore. And then I was thinking that it was strange how you could say something so honest to a complete stranger, but probably not to the people in your regular life." Michael's expression shifted, acknowledgement of the truth in her words. "You're right," he said quietly. "It's easier to be honest with someone who exists outside your usual context, someone who doesn't have expectations or agendas." Emma took a few steps closer, her resolve strengthening. "But that's the problem, isn't it? You wanted me to be outside your context, to be this space where you could be real without consequences. But I'm not outside context. I have a life, a child, a reputation in my community. When you entered my world, when we started, whatever this is, there were consequences. Real ones." Michael flinched slightly but did not look away. "I know. I should have realized that sooner. I should have protected you better." Emma shook her head. "That's not what I need. I don't need you to protect me like I'm some fragile thing that can't handle the real world. I've been handling the real world my entire life. What I need is for you to understand that my world matters just as much as yours, that the judgment I face is real and damaging, not just something that can be dismissed because you have money or influence." The words came out stronger than she had intended, but they felt right. This was what she had needed to say, what had been building in her since that morning in the diner, when the whispers started. Since the night she had overheard the mocking jokes at his investor meeting. Michael moved closer to her, his hands in his pockets, his posture no longer defensive but open. "You're absolutely right," he said, "and I'm sorry it took me so long to fully understand that. I got caught up in my own discomfort, my own feelings of being exposed, and I didn't think enough about how much worse it was for you, how much more you had to lose." Emma felt some of the tension in her shoulders release. This was what she had needed to hear, not promises to fix everything or grand declarations, but simple acknowledgement of the imbalance, of the different stakes they each faced. They stood in silence for a moment, the afternoon light streaming through the windows, the city humming far below. Finally Emma spoke again. "Your letter said you wanted to build something with truth instead of ostentation. What does that actually mean?" Michael considered the question seriously. "I think it means being willing to be uncomfortable. It means not using money or status as a shield. It means showing up in ways that feel awkward or uncertain, because that's where real connection happens. It means," and he paused, meeting her eyes directly, "it means respecting your boundaries and your pace, and not assuming I know what's best for you or Liam." Emma nodded slowly. "The job offer, the personal driver position, is that still available?" Michael looked surprised but hopeful. "Yes, absolutely, but I want you to know there are no strings attached. If you take the job, it's because it works for you practically, not because you feel obligated to me in any way. We can keep whatever this is." He gestured between them. completely separate from the work arrangement. So we can figure out what this is first, before mixing in employment. Whatever you need. The fact that he was giving her choices, real ones, meant more than Emma could easily express. I need to think about it, she said honestly. I need to figure out what makes sense for me and for Liam. But I wanted you to know that I'm not running away anymore. I'm not disappearing. If we're going to figure this out, whatever this is, we need to do it with honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Michael's expression softened into something that looked like relief. I can do that. I want to do that. Emma glanced around the apartment one more time, taking in the space that represented his world. It was beautiful, but it was also isolating in its perfection. She thought about her own small apartment, with Liam's drawings taped to the refrigerator, with mismatched furniture and the constant ambient noise of neighbors living their lives in close proximity. Both spaces had value. Both represented different ways of moving through the world. Maybe the challenge was not about one of them joining the other's world completely, but about creating something new between them, something that honored both realities. I should go, Emma said. I need to pick up Liam from school soon. Michael nodded. Can I see you again soon? She smiled slightly. Yes, but let's do it right this time. No more me just being your driver. No more you just showing up at my work. Let's actually spend time together intentionally. Michael returned her smile. I'd like that. A real date? The phrase felt both too formal and somehow exactly right. Yeah, Emma said. A real date. As she rode the elevator back down, Emma felt something shift inside her. It was not certainty. She was still uncertain about so many things, but it was possibility. The possibility that two people from different worlds could find a way to understand each other. The possibility that her life could expand beyond just survival into something fuller, something that included connection and maybe even joy. The possibility that the phrase spoken in the back of her car that rainy night had not just been a moment of vulnerability, but the beginning of something more lasting. When she picked up Liam from school, he bounded toward her with his usual energy, his backpack bouncing. Mommy, we learned about butterflies today. Did you know they start as caterpillars? Emma hugged him tight, breathing in the scent of his hair, feeling grounded by his presence. I did know that, baby. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? How they transform. Liam nodded enthusiastically. Mrs. Peterson said it's called metamorphosis. That's a really big word. Emma smiled. It is a big word, and it's a big idea too. The idea that something can change completely, but still be the same creature underneath. As they drove home through the afternoon traffic, Emma thought about transformation, about the ways people changed and stayed the same, about the courage it took to allow yourself to become something new while honoring who you had always been. She thought about the choices ahead of her, about the date she had agreed to, about the job offer she needed to consider, about the life she wanted to build for herself and for Liam. There were no easy answers, no clear path forward, but for the first time in a long time, Emma felt like she was moving toward something rather than just away from hardship. And that shift, small as it might seem, felt significant. That evening, after putting Liam to bed, Emma sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop. She had been avoiding social media since the photos had appeared, had not wanted to see the comments or engage with the narrative that had been created about her. But tonight she decided to look, not to torture herself, but to face it directly. The photos were still there, the comments still harsh in many cases. But she also noticed other things she had missed in her initial panic. Comments from people defending her, pointing out that she had every right to have friends regardless of their income level. Comments questioning why a woman could not exist in a hospital waiting room without being accused of gold digging. Comments noting that maybe, just maybe, Michael Harrison was a better person for showing up for someone who clearly mattered to him. The internet was not unanimous in its cruelty, Emma realized. She had focused on the worst because that was what had hurt most deeply. But there was also pushback, people willing to question the assumptions, to imagine a more generous interpretation. It did not erase the pain of the harsh judgment, but it complicated it, made it less absolute. Emma closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of her apartment. She thought about what she wanted her life to look like a year from now, 5 years from now. She wanted Liam to have opportunities she never had. She wanted to feel less exhausted all the time, She wanted to build something that felt sustainable, rather than always being on the edge of falling apart. And she was finally willing to admit it to herself, she wanted connection. She wanted someone to share the weight of daily life with, someone who saw her fully and chose to stay. Michael might be that person, or he might not be. They barely knew each other, really, had shared only a handful of significant moments. But those moments had meant something, had revealed something essential about both of them. And maybe that was enough to build on, if they were both willing to be patient, to be honest, to navigate the complications that came with crossing the invisible boundaries that separated their worlds. Emma pulled out her phone and typed a message. "Thank you for listening today, for understanding. Let's have that date this weekend. Somewhere in the middle. Not your world or mine, but somewhere we can both just be ourselves." She hit send before she could overthink it. Michael's response came quickly. "I'd love that. I'll find a place. Thank you for giving me another chance." Emma smiled at her phone, feeling a flutter of nervousness and anticipation. She was doing this, really doing this, choosing to be open to possibility despite the risks. It felt terrifying and right at the same time. She thought about what Liam had said that morning, about everyone deserving another chance, about trying again after making mistakes. Her son was wiser than she gave him credit for, seeing the world with a clarity that adults often lost in their accumulation of hurts and defenses. The weekend arrived with surprising speed. Emma found herself more nervous than she had expected, standing in front of her closet and trying to figure out what to wear. She did not want to look like she was trying too hard, but she also wanted to feel confident, to present herself as someone who belonged wherever she went. Finally, she settled on jeans and a simple sweater, her most comfortable boots, minimal jewelry. This was who she was, take it or leave it. Liam watched from her doorway as she got ready. "You look pretty, Mummy." Emma turned and smiled at him. "Thank you, baby. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door is going to watch you tonight. She's going to make you dinner and let you watch a movie before bed." Liam bounced excitedly. "Can I watch the dinosaur movie?" Emma laughed. "If Mrs. Rodriguez says it's okay, then yes." Liam studied her for a moment, his young face serious. "Are you going to see Michael?" Emma nodded, kneeling down to his level. "I am. We're going to spend some time together." "Is that okay with you?" Liam considered this carefully. "Does he make you happy?" The question was so direct, so cutting to the essential truth, that Emma had to pause and really think about her answer. "I think he might," she said honestly, "but I'm still figuring it out. Sometimes grown-ups need time to understand their feelings." Liam nodded sagely. "Like how I wasn't sure if I liked broccoli, but then I tried it lots of times, and now I think it's pretty good." Emma grinned. Exactly like that. After dropping Liam with Mrs. Rodriguez and receiving her assurances that everything would be fine, Emma headed to the restaurant Michael had chosen. It was in West Loop, an area that had been transitioning over the past decade from industrial warehouses to trendy restaurants and galleries. The restaurant he had picked was not too formal, but not casual either, the kind of place where you could go in jeans or dress clothes and fit in either way. Emma appreciated the thought he had put into finding middle ground. Michael was already there when she arrived, waiting outside the entrance. He was dressed casually too, jeans and a button-down shirt with no tie, his hair less perfectly styled than it had been when she first met him. He looked nervous, which somehow made Emma feel better about her own nervousness. "Emma, hi, you look great," she smiled. "Thanks, so do you." They went inside and were seated at a table near the window, where they could watch the street activity. For the first few minutes, there was an awkwardness between them, the weight of everything that had happened, everything that had been said, creating a kind of pressure. Finally, Michael broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what you said, about my world and your world. I realized I've spent most of my adult life in spaces where everyone is competing, where every interaction is strategic. The idea of just being with someone without all that noise, it's something I didn't know I needed until I met you." Emma appreciated his honesty, but also wanted to complicate it a bit. "I don't want to be your escape from reality, though. I don't want to be the person you come to when you need a break from your real life. I need to be part of your real life if we're going to do this. And you need to be part of mine, with all the complications that includes." Michael nodded seriously. "You're right, and I want that. But I also need you to help me understand how to do it right. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to occasionally be oblivious to things I should notice. I need you to tell me when that happens, not just disappear." Emma met his eyes. "That goes both ways. I'm not good at asking for help. I'm not good at letting people in. I'm probably going to pull away sometimes when I feel overwhelmed. You'll need to call me on that too." It was a commitment of sorts, not to perfection but to effort, to staying in the conversation even when it got difficult. They ordered food, and as the evening progressed, some of the tension eased. They talked about small things and big things, about Liam's fascination with dinosaurs and Michael's work stress, about growing up in different parts of Chicago, about dreams they had given up on, and ones they still secretly held. Emma told him about wanting to go back to school eventually, maybe study business management, maybe open her own restaurant someday instead of just working in other people's places. Michael told her about a non-profit he wanted to start, focused on creating pathways to employment for people who faced barriers, people who reminded him of his own father, who had struggled after a factory closure when Michael was young. It was the first time he had mentioned his family background, and Emma realized there were layers to his story she had assumed away, had thought his privileged life was simple and uncomplicated. Everyone had their complications, their histories that shaped them in invisible ways. By the time dessert arrived, Emma felt more relaxed than she had in weeks. Being with Michael like this, without the context of driver and passenger, without the weight of public scrutiny, felt surprisingly natural. He was funny in a dry way, observant about people and the absurdities of life, willing to laugh at himself. Emma found herself genuinely enjoying his company, not just appreciating the gesture of him showing up, but actually liking who he was as a person. That distinction mattered more than she had anticipated. As they left the restaurant and walked toward where Emma had parked her car, Michael asked hesitantly, "Can I see you again? Not in 2 weeks or whenever schedules align, but soon? Like this?" Emma smiled. "Yes, I'd like that." And she added, "I've been thinking about the job offer. I'd like to hear more details." Not because of this, she gestured between them, but because it might actually be a good opportunity for me and for Liam. If we can keep it professional, if it's a real job and not charity, then I'm interested. Michael's face lit up. "It is a real job. I need someone I can trust, someone reliable. The fact that you're also someone I care about is separate. We can keep clear boundaries. We'll put everything in writing. Proper contract, proper salary, everything professional." They stood by her car, the city night alive around them with traffic and voices and the ambient energy of people moving through their lives. "Thank you for tonight," Emma said softly. "For trying, for listening." Michael reached out slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted, and gently took her hand. "Thank you for giving me a chance to get this right." They stood like that for a moment, hands linked, both aware that this was fragile and new and could still fall apart in a dozen different ways. But it was also real, built on actual conversation and mutual respect rather than fantasy or desperation. When Emma drove home that night, she felt lighter than she had in months. Not because all her problems were solved, they were not. Not because she knew how this would turn out, she did not. But because she had chosen something for herself, had allowed herself to imagine a future that included more than just survival. That act of imagination, of allowing possibility, felt revolutionary in its own small way. The following weeks brought a new rhythm to Emma's life. She continued driving for the rideshare app, while she and Michael worked out the details of the personal driver position. They had dinner together twice more, met at a park with Liam where Michael was surprisingly good at playing dinosaurs with her son, talked on the phone late at night when Liam was asleep, and Emma had a few moments to herself. The job contract was professional and fair, with a salary that made Emma's eyes widen, with clear hours and expectations, with benefits she had never had in any job before. When she finally gave notice to the rideshare company and accepted the position as Michael's personal driver, Emma felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was a big change, a risk that could go wrong in multiple ways, but it was also an opportunity to have more time with Liam, to have financial stability, to not be constantly exhausted. Her first official day on the job, Michael treated her exactly as he would any professional employee. He was polite, clear about where he needed to go, did not try to blur the lines between the professional relationship and the personal one they were also developing. Emma appreciated that he was taking seriously the need for boundaries, but boundaries in real life were messier than they seemed in theory. Because Michael's work brought him into contact with people who had seen the photos, who had their opinions about Emma, who watched the interaction between them with knowing looks or barely concealed judgment. Emma had prepared herself for this, or thought she had, but experiencing it directly was harder than she had anticipated. At a business lunch where Emma waited in the car, she saw through the restaurant window as Michael was clearly asked about her by his dining companions. She saw him respond, saw the set of his shoulders that suggested he was defending her, but she also felt the familiar burn of being discussed, being reduced to a topic of gossip. That evening, after Michael had completed his last meeting and they were driving back to his place, Emma brought it up. "People are still talking, still making assumptions," Michael sighed from the back seat. "I know, I'm sorry. I try to shut it down, but some people are persistent in their nosiness." Emma glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Does it bother you? The questions, the gossip?" Michael was quiet for a moment. "Honestly? Yes, not because I'm ashamed of anything, but because I hate that it affects you. I hate that my life, my public profile, whatever you want to call it, creates problems for you." Emma pulled up to his building and turned off the car, swiveling in her seat to face him properly. "We need to figure out how to navigate this," she said firmly, "because it's not going to stop. People are going to have opinions. Your business associates are going to have questions. And I can't spend all my time wondering what people are saying or thinking about me. It'll drive me crazy." Michael unbuckled his seatbelt and leaned forward. "What do you need from me? How can I make this easier?" Emma considered. "I need you to be consistent. When people ask, tell them the truth in whatever way feels right to you. That I work for you, that we're also seeing each other, that it's none of their business, whatever. But be consistent so I'm not trying to guess what narrative you're putting out there." Michael nodded. "I can do that. And Emma, I want you to know, you're not an embarrassment or a complication to me. You're someone I care about, who also happens to be excellent at a job I need done. Those two things can coexist." Emma felt some of the tension in her chest release. The fact that he said it clearly, without hedging or minimizing, mattered. "Okay," she said. "We'll figure it out." Michael smiled slightly. "We will. Can I take you and Liam to dinner this weekend? Somewhere kid-friendly where we can just relax?" Emma returned his smile. "Liam would love that. He's been asking when he gets to see you again." The dinner that weekend was at a casual Italian place with good pizza and a relaxed atmosphere. Liam was in his element, telling Michael elaborate stories about dinosaurs and showing him drawings he had made at school. Michael listened with genuine attention, asked questions, engaged with Liam's enthusiasm without condescension. Emma watched them interact and felt something warm and hopeful bloom in her chest. This could work. They could actually build something here, the three of them, if they were patient and honest and willing to navigate the complications. After dinner, they walked through a nearby neighborhood, Liam running ahead to look at Halloween decorations that were starting to appear as October progressed. Michael walked beside Emma, close enough that their hands occasionally brushed. "Can I ask you something?" Michael said quietly. Emma nodded. "That night, the first night when I fell asleep in your car, why did you cover me with your jacket?" Emma thought back to that rainy night that now felt both recent and distant. "I don't know exactly," she admitted. "You seemed lost, vulnerable, like you needed someone to see that you were human and not just a person in an expensive suit. I guess I understood that feeling." Michael looked at her with an expression that was hard to read. "That simple act, it meant more to me than you probably realize. I had spent that whole evening at a dinner where people talked around things, where everything was strategic, where showing any real emotion would have been seen as weakness. And then I got in your car and I just broke. And instead of judging me or taking advantage of seeing me like that, you just covered me with a jacket and made sure I got home safe." Emma felt her eyes getting misty. "We all need that sometimes," she said softly. "Someone to see us at our worst and not use it against us." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, watching Liam explore, listening to the evening sounds of the city. Emma thought about how far they had come from that first night, from that moment of unexpected vulnerability. She thought about all the complications that still existed, the gaps in their lived experiences, the judgments they would continue to face, the ways they would inevitably hurt each other without meaning to. But she also thought about the possibility of building something real, despite all of that, of choosing each other again and again in small moments that added up to something lasting. The following month brought its own challenges and joys. Emma settled into her new job, learning Michael's schedule and preferences, learning to navigate his professional world while maintaining her own sense of self. Liam started to accept Michael as a regular presence in their lives, included him in his drawings, asked about him when he was not around. Emma and Michael continued to have dates, sometimes fancy dinners, sometimes just walks through different neighborhoods, sometimes staying in at her apartment, where they would cook together and watch Liam play. They were building a relationship, messy and imperfect and real. But the public interest had not completely died down. A gossip blogger, who had originally posted the hospital photos, found Emma on social media and started following her accounts, posting about her movements, creating a narrative that Emma found both invasive and distorted. One post showed photos of Emma picking up Liam from school, with caption wondering if this was really a driver-employee relationship or something more. Another post showed her and Michael at a restaurant, with speculation about whether she had trapped a rich CEO with a child who might not even be his. The posts were mean-spirited and based on virtually no actual information, but they gained traction, were shared and commented on by people who had never met either of them, but felt entitled to opinions. The invasion of privacy started affecting Liam. Kids at school, prompted by their parents who had seen the posts, started asking questions. Is your mom dating a rich man? Are you going to be rich now? Is that your new dad? Liam, confused by the questions, came home asking Emma what it all meant. Emma sat with him and tried to explain in age-appropriate terms that sometimes people were curious about other people's lives, that it did not mean anything was wrong, that their life was still their life no matter what anyone said. But she could see the confusion in his young face, the first awareness that their lives were being observed and commented on by strangers. That night, after Liam was asleep, Emma called Michael. She was angry in a way she had not allowed herself to be before. This is not okay, she said without preamble. People are following me. People are taking pictures of my son without permission. Kids at school are asking him questions that 5-year-olds should not have to think about. And I don't know how to make it stop. Michael was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm so sorry. I'll call my lawyer tomorrow. We can send cease and desist letters to the blogger. We can potentially pursue legal action for harassment. Emma wanted to find comfort in that, but she also knew that legal action would just feed the narrative, make the story bigger. I don't know if that will help or make it worse, she said wearily. Michael, I don't know if I can do this. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Michael's voice when he responded was tight with emotion. I understand if you need to step back. I understand if this is too much. I hate that my life is causing you and Liam pain. That's the opposite of what I want. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. I don't want to step back. I want to be with you. I want Liam to have you in his life. But I also need to protect my son. I need to make sure that being connected to you doesn't hurt him. The impossible balance of wanting something while recognizing the costs of having it. They talked for over an hour, working through options and fears and possibilities. Finally, Michael said, what if we tried to control the narrative? What if instead of hiding or reacting defensively, we just told the truth on our own terms? I could do an interview, talk about you and Liam honestly, make it clear that our relationship is real and serious and none of anyone's damn business beyond that basic fact. Emma was not sure. That could backfire. That could make things worse. But it could also take away the mystery, the speculation. It could humanize us in a way that makes the gossip less interesting. Emma thought about it, weighing the risks. Part of her wanted to stay invisible, to protect herself and Liam through obscurity. But she was not invisible anymore. That option no longer existed. Maybe Michael was right. Maybe facing it directly was the only way through. Okay, she said finally, but I want to be involved in planning it. I want to approve what you say. This is my life too. Absolutely, Michael agreed. We'll do this together. The interview was arranged with a respected journalist, known for thoughtful profiles rather than sensationalism. Michael was clear with the journalist from the beginning. He would talk about his relationship with Emma, about how they met, about the seriousness of their connection. He would not tolerate gotcha questions or attempts to paint Emma negatively. The journalist, perhaps sensing a more interesting story in truth than in scandal, agreed to the terms. Emma was not part of the interview itself. That felt like too much exposure, but she helped Michael prepare, talked through what details felt okay to share versus what should remain private. They agreed he would be honest about meeting her as his driver, about their different backgrounds, about the genuine connection that had developed. He would not pretend they lived in some fairy tale where differences did not matter, but he would also make clear that those differences did not define or limit what they were building together. When the interview was published a week later, Emma read it with her heart in her throat. Michael had been honest, sometimes painfully so. He talked about his own privilege, about the hollowness he had felt before meeting Emma, about how she had challenged him to think differently about success and meaning. He talked about Liam with clear affection, about how being around a child had reminded him of simple joys he had forgotten. And he talked about Emma herself with a respect and admiration that made her cry as she read it. He called her one of the strongest, most genuine people he had ever met. He acknowledged the challenges their relationship faced, the judgments they both received, but made clear that she was worth it, that what they had was worth fighting for. The response to the interview was mixed, as Emma had expected. Some people were moved by the honesty, wrote supportive comments about cross-class relationships, appreciated Michael's willingness to be vulnerable. Others remained skeptical or critical, still convinced Emma was somehow manipulating the situation. But the key difference was that the conversation shifted. Instead of being about speculation and scandal, it became about a specific relationship between specific people. The gossip blogger who had been following Emma found that her posts no longer generated the same level of interest. The story had been told, and there was nothing left to speculate about. At Liam's school, the questions from other kids gradually died down. Emma made a point of talking to his teacher, explaining the situation and asking for help in protecting Liam from any bullying or unwanted attention. The teacher was understanding and vigilant. Slowly, life began to feel more normal again. Emma continued her work as Michael's driver, their professional relationship running parallel to their personal one, with surprisingly little conflict. They had figured out how to be colleagues during work hours and partners during their personal time, to respect the boundaries that made both dynamics possible. As autumn deepened and the holidays approached, Emma found herself feeling cautiously optimistic about the future. She and Michael had weathered the exposure, the judgment, the complications. They had not solved everything, would likely face more challenges as they continued to navigate their relationship, but they had proven they could face difficulty together. That resilience, that willingness to stay and work through problems, felt like a stronger foundation than any perfect beginning could have provided. One evening in early November, Emma was at Michael's apartment after work. Liam was with Mrs. Rodriguez for a few hours, giving Emma and Michael some rare alone time. They were cooking dinner together, a simple pasta dish, moving around the kitchen with an ease that came from growing familiarity. Music played softly in the background. The city lights sparkled through the windows. It was a moment of perfect ordinary contentment, the kind of moment Emma had not imagined would ever be part of her life. Michael looked up from chopping vegetables and caught her watching him. "What are you thinking?" he asked with a smile. Emma considered how to put it into words. "I'm thinking about that first night, when you fell asleep in my car and I covered you with my jacket. I'm thinking about how strange it is that such a small moment led to all of this." Michael set down the knife and came around the counter to where she stood. "It wasn't a small moment," he said gently. "It was the moment when I realized I had been sleepwalking through my life, going through motions without really being present. And you were so real, so grounded. You woke something up in me." Emma leaned into him, feeling the solid reality of his presence. "You woke something up in me too," she admitted. "I had gotten so used to just surviving that I had forgotten I was allowed to want more. To imagine a life that included not just making it through the day, but actually being happy." They stood like that for a while, holding each other in the quiet kitchen, both aware of how improbable this was, how many ways it could have gone differently, how many obstacles they had overcome to get to this moment of simple domestic peace. The pasta water began to boil, and they separated to finish cooking, but the sense of connection remained. a thread running between them that felt strong despite its newness. Over dinner, they talked about Thanksgiving plans. Michael wanted to invite Emma and Liam to spend the holiday with him. It would be small, just the three of them, but he wanted to start building traditions together. Emma felt both moved and nervous about the suggestion. Traditions implied longevity, implied that this was not just a temporary thing, but something they were both committed to for the long term. "Are you sure?" she asked. "I mean, that's a big step. Meeting each other's families might come next, and that's, well, complicated." Michael reached across the table and took her hand. "I'm sure. I know we're still figuring things out, but I'm serious about this, about us. I want to build a life with you and Liam, if you'll let me. Not by taking over or trying to rescue you, but by being a genuine partner." The words were both thrilling and terrifying. Emma had been alone for so long, had carried every burden herself, that the idea of sharing that weight with someone else felt foreign. But she was learning to trust, learning to believe that Michael meant what he said, that his presence in her life was not temporary or transactional. "Okay," she said softly, "let's do Thanksgiving together. Let's start building those traditions." Michael's face lit up with a smile that made him look younger, less burdened by the weight of his professional responsibilities. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me, for giving us this chance." Thanksgiving arrived with crisp November weather and a sense of anticipation. Emma brought Liam to Michael's apartment in the afternoon, both of them carrying dishes Emma had prepared. Liam was excited, wearing his favorite shirt with a dinosaur on it, carrying a drawing he had made for Michael. Michael opened the door wearing an apron, flour somehow smudged on his cheek, looking more relaxed than Emma had ever seen him in his professional environment. He scooped Liam up in a greeting that made the boy giggle, then kissed Emma softly before ushering them inside. The afternoon was everything a holiday should be. They cooked together, Michael proving surprisingly competent in the kitchen, despite his claims of being out of practice. Liam helped where he could, measuring ingredients and stirring when allowed. They watched the Thanksgiving parade on TV, ate too much food, played games with Liam that involved elaborate dinosaur scenarios. It was normal and extraordinary at the same time. Normal in its simple domestic rhythms, extraordinary because it represented a kind of belonging Emma had almost given up on hoping for. After Liam had fallen asleep on the couch, worn out from the excitement and activity of the day, Emma and Michael sat by the window, looking out at the city below. "Thank you for today," Emma said quietly. It was really special." Michael put his arm around her, drawing her close. "Thank you for being here, for bringing Liam, for letting me be part of your family." Emma rested her head on his shoulder, feeling a peace she had rarely experienced. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "when you said that thing in my car that first night about not knowing if you were living or just existing, I felt the same way. But I think maybe we're both actually living now, really living." Michael pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I think you're right. And it's because of you, because of your willingness to see me as a person rather than a role or a status. You gave me permission to be real." Emma smiled. "You gave me permission to want more, to believe I deserved more than just survival." They sat in comfortable silence, both thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment, about the challenges they had faced and the ones that surely still lay ahead. But for now, in this moment, with Liam sleeping peacefully nearby and the city spread out below them, everything felt possible. As December arrived, and the city transformed with holiday lights and decorations, Emma and Michael continued to build their life together. They had their first argument about something small that revealed larger, tensions about decision-making and autonomy. They worked through it with honest conversation and mutual apologies, emerging more solid for having navigated conflict successfully. They had more exposure in the press, but it had less power over them now, felt more like background noise than existential threat. Emma met Michael's mother, a meeting that was awkward at first but gradually warmed as the older woman saw how happy her son was, how grounded he had become. Michael met the neighbors in Emma's building, who had become like family to her, earned their protective approval through respect and genuine care for Emma and Liam. Through it all, the relationship between Michael and Liam deepened. Michael showed up for school events, helped with homework, taught Liam to play chess with endless patience. He did not try to replace Liam's absent father, did not push for any particular role, but simply showed up consistently and let the relationship evolve naturally. Liam, for his part, clearly adored Michael, included him in his drawings now as a permanent fixture, asked for him when he was not around, seemed to feel more secure with an additional adult presence in his life. Emma watched this development with a mixture of joy and caution. She was so grateful that Liam had a positive male figure in his life, someone who was reliable and caring. But she also worried about what would happen if things did not work out with Michael, how that loss would affect her son, who had already experienced abandonment once. Michael seemed to understand these fears without her having to voice them. One evening, after putting Liam to bed, he brought it up directly. "I know you worry about Liam getting too attached," he said. "I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. This isn't temporary for me. Even if things somehow did not work out between us romantically, though I can't imagine that happening, I would still want to be part of Liam's life, if you'd allow it. I'm committed to both of you." The assurance meant everything to Emma. It addressed the fear she had not known how to articulate, the terror of her son being abandoned again. With that fear eased, she found herself able to relax more fully into the relationship, to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, to trust that this was real and lasting. As Christmas approached, they made plans together, coordinated their schedules, talked about the future with increasing specificity. Michael had never been this happy, he told Emma one night. He had achieved all the traditional markers of success, wealth and recognition and power in his field, but none of it had felt meaningful until he had someone to share his life with, until he had real connection and purpose. Emma understood what he meant. She had survived on determination alone for so long, had measured success by whether the bills got paid and Liam was okay. Now she had space to want more, to have ambitions beyond survival, to imagine a future that included joy and partnership and possibility. She had enrolled in an online business course, was starting to seriously plan for the restaurant she had always dreamed of opening. Michael supported this completely, offered to help with startup capital when the time came, but made clear it would be her vision, her business, her achievement. He would be a supporter, not a savior. Emma appreciated that distinction more than she could express. On Christmas Eve, the three of them were at Emma's apartment. Emma had insisted, wanting Liam to wake up in his own space on Christmas morning, wanting to maintain some of their established traditions even as new ones formed. They had decorated a small tree together, strung lights around the living room, baked cookies that Liam had decorated with excessive amounts of frosting. After Liam had been tucked into bed, still vibrating with excitement about Santa's impending arrival, Emma and Michael finished wrapping the last of the presents and setting them under the tree. As they worked together in the quiet apartment, Emma felt overwhelmingly grateful, not just for the material improvements in her life, though those were significant, but for the feeling of partnership, of not being alone anymore. Michael looked up from the wrapping paper and caught her expression. "What?" he asked softly. Emma shook her head, smiling. I'm really happy. I didn't think I could have this." Michael set down the scissors and came to her, wrapping his arms around her. "You deserve this and so much more," he said firmly. "You deserve every good thing." Emma let herself lean into him, let herself fully feel the truth of that statement. Maybe she did deserve good things. Maybe they both did. Christmas morning was chaos in the best possible way. Liam woke at dawn, raced to the living room, gasped with delight at the presents under the tree. He tore through wrapping paper with abandon, exclaiming over each gift, hugging both Emma and Michael repeatedly. Michael had gotten him an elaborate dinosaur set he had been wanting, and Liam's reaction was pure joy. Emma gave Michael a framed photo she had taken at Thanksgiving, the three of them laughing together in the kitchen, and saw his eyes get misty as he looked at it. He gave her a small box that she opened with trembling hands to find a delicate necklace with a small pendant shaped like a compass. "So you always know you can find your way," he said quietly. After the present opening, they made breakfast together, then bundled up to walk through the snow-dusted neighborhood. Liam ran ahead, leaving small footprints, while Emma and Michael walked hand in hand behind him. "This is what I wanted," Michael said, watching Liam play. "This sense of home, of family. I didn't even know I was missing it until I found it with you." Emma squeezed his hand. "I didn't know I could have it. I thought this kind of happiness was for other people, people whose lives were more conventional. Michael stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Your life is beautiful exactly as it is. You made a home for Liam with nothing but determination and love. You survived things that would break most people. That's not less than conventional, that's extraordinary." The words settled into Emma's heart, filling spaces she had not known were empty. She had spent so long seeing herself through the lens of what she lacked, what she had failed to provide, that she had not recognized her own strength, her own worth. Michael saw that worth, reflected it back to her in ways that were gradually changing how she saw herself. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for seeing me, for not giving up even when I disappeared, for being patient while I figured out how to trust this." Michael cupped her face gently. "Thank you for letting me in, for taking a chance on something improbable." As winter deepened and the new year arrived, Emma and Michael began having more serious conversations about their future. They had been together for several months now, had weathered challenges and built something solid. Michael wanted to know if Emma would consider eventually moving in together, combining their households. Emma was hesitant at first. Her apartment was small, but it was hers, represented her independence and hard-won stability. Moving into Michael's space would mean giving up that independence in some ways, would mean trusting him with even more of herself and of Liam's well-being. But she was also tired of splitting time between two places, tired of Liam having to pack a bag whenever they spent extended time at Michael's apartment. They compromised. Instead of Emma moving into Michael's existing place, they would find somewhere new together, a place that belonged to both of them from the start, where Emma would have equal say in decisions, where Liam would have his own room that felt permanent. They started looking at options, places that split the difference between their two worlds, neighborhoods that were comfortable for both of them. It felt like a huge step, but it also felt right, like the natural progression of what they had been building. In March, they found a townhouse in a neighborhood undergoing revitalization. It had space for all three of them, a backyard where Liam could play, and it felt like a place where they could truly build a life together. The process of buying the place together, with both their names on everything, felt profoundly significant to Emma. She was not being taken care of or saved. She was entering into an equal partnership, building something that belonged to both of them. Michael understood the importance of this and made sure every step reinforced their equality, their mutual investment in creating a shared home. Moving day in May was organized chaos. Friends from both their worlds came to help, and Emma was struck by how her life had expanded, how many people now formed part of their community. Rosa from the diner showed up with food for everyone. Michael's assistant helped organize boxes. Mrs. Rodriguez watched Liam and kept him entertained while the adults did heavy lifting. Marcus, the regular customer from the diner who had always been kind to Emma, offered his truck for transporting furniture. By the end of the day, Emma and Michael and Liam stood in their new home, surrounded by boxes but also by the feeling of possibility, of new beginnings. That night, after Liam had fallen asleep in his new room, Emma and Michael sat on the floor of their empty living room, too tired to unpack more but too wired to sleep. "We did it," Emma said wonderingly. "We actually built something together." Michael took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "We did. And we'll keep building it every day through whatever comes." Emma leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the truth of his words. The future was uncertain, would bring challenges they could not yet anticipate. But they would face those challenges together, would figure things out as they went, would keep choosing each other through the difficult moments and the joyful ones. As spring turned to summer, their life together found its rhythm. Liam thrived with the stability, with having two parents who were present and consistent. Emma's business course progressed well, and she began seriously developing a business plan for her restaurant, with Michael offering advice but never taking over, always reinforcing that this was her dream to pursue. Michael's work continued to be demanding, but he had gotten better at setting boundaries, at making sure he was present for the life he had built rather than sacrificing everything to his career. They fought sometimes, about money or parenting decisions or how to spend their limited free time, but they had learned how to fight productively, to hear each other and compromise and emerge stronger. In July, on a warm evening when they were having a barbecue in their backyard, Emma looked around at the scene. Liam playing with neighborhood kids he had befriended. Michael at the grill, laughing at something one of their guests had said. The table set with food people had brought to share, music playing softly in the background. This was the life she had built, not through fairy tale magic, but through hard work and courage and the willingness to be vulnerable. She thought back to that rainy night when she had covered a sleeping stranger with her jacket, that small act of human kindness that had somehow led to all of this. Michael caught her eye across the yard and smiled, a smile full of love and contentment and shared understanding. Emma smiled back, feeling a swell of emotion. They had both been lost in their different ways that night, both just existing rather than truly living. But they had found each other, had chosen to see past the surfaces to the real people underneath, and in doing so had found a way to really live together. Liam ran up to her, pulling her hand to come see something he had discovered. Emma let herself be led, laughing, aware that this moment, this ordinary, beautiful moment, was exactly what both she and Michael had been searching for all along. Not perfection, not a fairy tale, but something real and earned and precious, a life built one day at a time, with truth and effort and love. As autumn returned, bringing the anniversary of when they had first met, Emma and Michael decided to do something to mark the occasion. Not anything grand or public, but something meaningful to them. They returned to the route Emma had driven that first night, retracing the path from the hotel to his building. This time Michael was in the front seat beside her, and Liam was safely buckled in the back. They drove slowly through the familiar streets, pointing out places that had become part of their shared history. The diner where he had first found her, the hospital where everything had become complicated, the park where they had taken those first tentative steps toward building something together. When they reached his old building, Emma pulled over, and they sat for a moment in silence. "So much had changed in a year," Emma said quietly. "A year ago I was just trying to survive, to get through one more day, and now I have this whole life I never imagined." Michael reached over and took her hand. "A year ago I was completely lost, going through motions without any real purpose. And then I got in your car and everything changed." Emma turned to look at him, seeing the same care and respect in his eyes that had drawn her to him in the first place. "You changed my life too," she said. "You saw me as a person, not just as a role or a service." That meant everything. From the back seat, Liam piped up, "Are we going to stay here? I'm hungry." They both laughed, the moment of reflection broken by the practical needs of a 6-year-old. "Let's go home," Michael said. "Our home." Emma smiled and started the car, pulling back into traffic. Yes, home. The place they had built together. The life they continued to create one day at a time. It was not perfect, would never be perfect, but it was real and it was theirs, and that was more than enough. As they drove through the city night, Emma thought about everything that had led to this moment. The struggles and hardships that had shaped her. The loneliness and emptiness that had defined Michael's life despite his success. The chance encounter that had opened a door for both of them. The courage it had taken to walk through that door, to risk vulnerability, to imagine a different future. And the daily choice repeated over and over to stay, to work through difficulties to build something lasting. In her rearview mirror, Emma could see Liam starting to doze, his head tilted at the angle that meant he would be asleep within minutes. Beside her, Michael was relaxed, humming along to the music playing softly on the radio. And Emma herself felt a peace that had been foreign to her for most of her life. Not the peace of having no problems or challenges, but the peace of knowing she did not have to face those problems alone. The peace of having built a life that had meaning beyond mere survival. They arrived home and carried a sleeping Liam inside, working together with the practiced ease of parents who had done this many times before. After tucking him into bed, they stood in the doorway of his room for a moment, watching him sleep. Michael put his arm around Emma's waist, and she leaned into him. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for showing up, for staying, for building this with me." Michael kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for taking a chance on me, for seeing past everything that could have kept us apart to what we could be together." They turned off the light and closed the door softly, moving to their own room, ready to rest and wake to another day of the life they had chosen. The next morning dawned with the promise of a beautiful autumn day. Emma woke early, as she always did, but instead of rushing immediately into the demands of the day, she allowed herself a moment to simply be present. She could hear Michael's steady breathing beside her, could hear Liam starting to stir in his room. The house was quiet and peaceful, filled with the comfort of people who loved each other. Emma thought about where she had been a year ago, thought about how impossible this life would have seemed to her then. But impossible things became possible when people were willing to be brave, to be honest, to reach across divides and see each other's humanity. She got out of bed quietly and went to start coffee, thinking about the day ahead. Liam had a soccer game in the afternoon. Michael had the day off from work, a rarity that they would spend together as a family. Emma had a meeting with a potential investor for her restaurant next week and needed to review her business plan. Ordinary plans, ordinary concerns, but undergirded by the extraordinary fact of having built a life where such ordinariness was possible. A life where she was not alone, where she had a partner, where her son had stability and love. A life that had started with a simple choice to cover a sleeping stranger with a jacket and see him as a human being who needed compassion. Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, drawn by the smell of coffee, his hair rumpled from sleep. "Morning," he said, his voice still rough. Emma poured him a cup and handed it to him with a soft kiss. "Good morning. Sleep well?" He nodded, taking a sip of coffee and pulling her close with his free arm. "Best sleep of my life. Every night." Emma laughed softly. "You say that every morning." Michael shrugged, smiling. "It's true every morning. This," he gestured around the kitchen, "you and Liam and this home we built, it's everything I never knew I needed." They heard Liam's door open and the patter of small feet running down the hallway. A moment later, he burst into the kitchen, still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up in multiple directions. "Is it soccer day?" he asked excitedly. Michael scooped him up, making him giggle. "It is soccer day. Are you ready to show everyone your new moves?" Liam nodded enthusiastically and launched into a detailed description of his soccer strategy. Emma watched them interact, her heart full. This was family. This was home. This was the life worth fighting for, worth risking vulnerability for, worth believing in despite all the reasons to be cynical or afraid. Later that morning, as they prepared to head to Liam's game, Emma found the old denim jacket she had covered Michael with that first night. She had kept it, even though it was worn and faded, because it represented something important. The moment when she had chosen kindness over indifference, when she had seen another person's pain and responded with compassion. That choice had changed everything, had set in motion a series of events that had transformed both their lives. She ran her fingers over the fabric, remembering that rainy night, remembering the stranger who had fallen asleep in her back seat, vulnerable and lost. That stranger was now her partner, the father figure to her son, the person she built her life with day by day. The transformation was remarkable, but it was also the result of countless small choices, countless moments of choosing connection over fear, honesty over pretense, love over self-protection. Michael came up behind her, seeing what she held. "The jacket," he said softly. "You kept it." Emma nodded. "Of course I kept it. It's important." Michael took it from her hands and examined it, his expression tender. "This jacket represents the moment my life started to make sense again. The moment someone saw me and chose kindness." Emma smiled. "It represents the moment I started to believe that maybe I could have more than just survival, that maybe I deserved more." They stood together, the jacket between them, thinking about everything it represented, everything that had grown from that single moment of human compassion. At the soccer game, they sat on the sidelines with other parents, cheering for Liam and his team. Michael was fully engaged, yelling encouragement, jumping up when Liam made a good play. Emma watched him and felt grateful all over again. This was a man who could have stayed in his isolated world of privilege and power, who could have dismissed his moment of vulnerability as an aberration. Instead, he had chosen to pay attention to that moment, to follow the thread it offered, to see where it might lead. And it had led here, to a soccer field on a Saturday morning, to being a parent and a partner, to a life that was messy and real and infinitely more meaningful than anything he had known before. After the game, they went for ice cream, a tradition they had established. Liam, still buzzing with energy despite running around for an hour, chatted about the game while working on a cone that was melting faster than he could eat it. Michael helped him, wiping drips, making silly faces that kept Liam laughing. Emma sat back and watched them, feeling a contentment so profound it was almost overwhelming. This was happiness. Not the absence of problems or challenges, but the presence of love and connection and shared purpose. The presence of people who chose each other, again and again, through good days and difficult ones. As they drove home in the late afternoon, the sun slanting through the car windows, creating patterns of light and shadow, Emma thought about everything they had been through to get here. The judgment from others, the complications of crossing class boundaries, the moments of doubt and fear, the constant work of building trust and understanding. It had not been easy, but it had been worth it. Every difficult conversation, every moment of vulnerability, every choice to stay and work through problems rather than run away, all of it had brought them to this place of genuine partnership and love. Emma glanced at Michael in the passenger seat, caught his eye and smiled. He smiled back, a smile full of warmth and promise. They were building a life together, and while there would certainly be more challenges ahead, Emma knew they could face them. They had proven that already, had proven they could work through difficulties and emerge stronger. That knowledge, that confidence in what they had built together, was perhaps the greatest gift of all. That evening, after dinner, and after putting Liam to bed, Emma and Michael sat in their living room, comfortable in the quiet. Emma had been thinking about something for a while, and she decided it was time to share it. "You know," she said, "I've been thinking about that night. About what you said in the car that made me feel so connected to you." Michael looked at her curiously. "I've wondered about that. It clearly affected you, but you never told me exactly why." Emma took a breath. "You said you didn't know if you were living or just existing anymore. And in that moment I realized I felt exactly the same way. I was going through the motions, surviving, but I had stopped actually living years before. When I heard you voice what I had been feeling but hadn't acknowledged, it created this instant sense of understanding, like maybe I wasn't alone in feeling lost." Michael reached for her hand, squeezing gently. "I remember feeling like I had accidentally told the truth to the one person I never expected to see again. And then when I did see you again at the diner, I was drawn back because I wanted more of that honesty, more of that feeling of being real." Emma nodded. "I think we both needed someone who could see us, not our circumstances or our roles, but actually us, and somehow we found each other at the exact moment when we were both ready to be seen." Michael pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. "I don't believe in fate exactly," he said, "but I believe that moment mattered. I believe we recognized something in each other that was worth pursuing." They sat in comfortable silence, both reflecting on the unlikely journey that had brought them together and carried them to this point. Emma thought about all the small decisions that had led to that first ride. If she had not accepted that late-night trip, if Michael had stayed at the hotel, if she had not covered him with her jacket, if he had not returned to the diner, if either of them had given up when things got complicated. So many moments where the story could have ended differently, where fear or pride or exhaustion could have won. But they had kept choosing connection, kept choosing to try, and that persistence had created something beautiful and lasting. As months turned into a full year and beyond, Emma and Michael continued to build their life together. They had their routines and rhythms, their inside jokes and shared memories. Emma opened her restaurant, a small place that focused on simple, good food and warm atmosphere. It was hard work, demanded long hours and constant attention, but it was hers, the realization of a dream she had carried for years. Michael was her biggest supporter, helping where he could but always respecting that this was her vision, her achievement. Liam grew, started first grade, made friends, developed his own personality and interests. He was secure and happy, thriving in the stable, loving home they had created for him. There were still challenges, moments of difficulty that tested them, differences in how they approached money or parenting or balancing work and family, occasional reminders that they came from different worlds, different assumptions about how life worked. But they had developed the tools to work through difficulties, to communicate honestly, to respect each other's perspectives even when they disagreed. Their relationship was not perfect, but it was real and strong and continually evolving. They had built something that could weather storms, something grounded in mutual respect and genuine love. 2 years after that first rainy night, Emma and Michael decided to make their commitment official. They planned a small wedding, just close friends and family, held in the backyard of their home. It was simple and perfect, focused on what mattered, their love for each other and their shared life. Liam was the ring-bearer, taking his role very seriously. Rosa from the diner cried happy tears. Michael's mother, who had come to truly value Emma, welcomed her warmly into the family. As Emma and Michael exchanged vows they had written themselves, speaking honestly about the journey that had brought them together and the future they were building, there was not a dry eye among their guests. Emma's vows spoke about being seen, about having someone recognize her worth when she had almost forgotten it herself, about partnership and respect, and the daily choice to love through difficulty, about gratitude for the life they had built together, for the family they had become. Michael's vows spoke about finding his way home, about learning what really mattered in life, about being loved not for what he had but for who he was, about the privilege of being Liam's father figure and Emma's husband, about the responsibility he took seriously to honor and support them always. When they kissed, sealing their promises to each other, their guests erupted in applause and cheers. At the reception, as they danced together for the first time as husband and wife, Emma looked up at Michael with joy radiating from her face. "We made it," she said softly. "Through everything, we made it here." Michael held her close, moving slowly to the music. "We did. And we'll keep making it, through whatever comes next." Emma rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the strength of his arms around her, hearing the celebration of people who loved them in the background. This was real. This was lasting. This was the life she had helped build through courage and vulnerability, and the willingness to imagine more for herself than she had ever thought possible. As the evening wore on and the celebration continued around them, Emma found a quiet moment to step away. She walked to the edge of their yard, looking back at the scene. The lights strung up overhead, the people laughing and dancing. Michael spinning Liam around, making him shriek with delight, the home they had created together. She thought about the person she had been 2 years ago, exhausted and lonely, and resigned to a life of pure survival. That person would not recognize her life now, would find it impossible to believe, but that person had made one crucial choice, had decided to see the humanity in a stranger and respond with compassion, and that choice had opened a door to everything that followed. Michael found her standing there and came to join her. "You okay?" he asked, concerned. Emma smiled and turned to him. "I'm more than okay. I'm happy. Really, truly happy. I was just thinking about how far we've come, how different everything is." Michael wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood together looking at the celebration. "It's different because we chose to see each other," he said quietly, "because we took a risk on something improbable, because we kept choosing each other even when it was hard." Emma leaned back into him. "Best choice I ever made." They stood like that for a while, comfortable in each other's presence, watching their life unfold before them. Liam came running over, pulling at Emma's dress. "Mom, Dad, come dance with me!" The casual way he called Michael Dad, the security and happiness evident in his young face, made Emma's heart swell. They let themselves be pulled back into the celebration, back into the joy and love that surrounded them. As they danced together, the three of them, Emma felt a profound sense of gratitude. For the courage to be vulnerable, for the willingness to try, for the love that had grown from the smallest seed of human kindness into something strong and lasting and beautiful. The night ended late, with guests departing slowly, offering hugs and congratulations. After the last person had left and they had done a quick clean-up, Emma, Michael and Liam collapsed on the couch together, exhausted but happy. Liam was already half asleep, curled up between them. "That was the best day ever," he mumbled. Emma and Michael exchanged a look over his head, smiling. "It really was," Emma agreed. Michael reached across Liam to take Emma's hand. "Here's to many more best days," he said softly. "Here's to the life we're building together." As they sat there, the three of them close together in the quiet house, Emma reflected on everything that had brought them to this moment. The struggles and pain of her past that had shaped her strength. The emptiness in Michael's success that had left him searching for meaning. The chance encounter that had opened a possibility neither of them had imagined. The courage to pursue that possibility despite the obstacles. The work of building trust and understanding across difference. The choice made over and over to stay and love and grow together. It had not been a fairy tale with its easy magic and guaranteed happy ending. It had been better than that. It had been real, hard-won, built with intention and effort and honest conversation. It had been the story of two People who had recognized each other's humanity at a vulnerable moment and decided that recognition mattered enough to risk everything. Comfortable and known for the possibility of genuine connection, and that risk had paid off in ways neither of them could have predicted, had created a life richer and more meaningful than anything they had known before. Emma looked around her home, at her sleeping son and her husband, at the evidence of the life they had built together, and felt overwhelming gratitude. This was what it meant to really live, not just exist. This was the gift they had given each other, permission to be fully human, fully present, fully alive. Dear listeners, we hope Emma and Michael's story has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. You can find it by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a thumbs up. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life, love, and human connection. Don't miss our upcoming content, and we look forward to hearing from you in the comments below. Share with us which moment resonated most deeply with you, and what you believe about the power of choosing compassion, even in the smallest moments. Thank you for being part of our community.